Hello! Welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a good day so far, or had a good day depending on what time it is. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can easily dome or gloss your piece while it's still inside the mold. So you pour it in your mold and you realize maybe you don't want to fill it up all the way, or you didn't have enough resin. And that can work out because instead of demolding it, you can, with it in the mold and it being face down and everything, you can dome the back of your piece. And this makes it easier to add on when you have a logo foil or a signature foil that you can easily just add onto your piece instead of having to do that when it's out of the mold. And it makes it easier when it comes to doming because you don't have to worry about any of the resin spilling out onto the sides of your piece, or you may still have some sanding depending on how it goes when you pour resin into the mold on top of your piece, depending on if it's unleveled or not, uneven. So just keep that in mind that you still may have to sand, may have to dome depending on how it comes out, but this is supposed to make doming easier, especially if you're someone that doesn't like to dome or has trouble with doming. So I'm going to show you, this is actually, I think, maybe my second time doing this. I usually fill my molds up pretty far, so when it comes to putting my signature logo foil on and doming my piece, I have to wait till it's out of the mold, and I always have issues with sanding and stuff like that. Oh, I also wanted to talk about doming in general. I know some people aren't aware about doming when it comes to resin. And really it's just getting a nice glossy layer on your piece. So maybe your piece, the back of your piece, let me see if I can show you an example. Like if you have little marks on your piece like that, maybe you want to dome that, maybe you want to cover it up, or you want to add your signature logo on and you want that to be glossy and embedded in the piece, you would dome it. Usually people just dome to get a nice glossy layer on to make their piece look shiny, look smooth. So you don't have to dome if you don't want to. With my business, I choose to dome my pieces. I think it just makes it look more glossy, more professional, but it's really up to you, your preferences. You may want to do it for your business, you may not want to. You may want to do it for yourself, you may not want to. You don't have to do it. But if you do it, you may consider doing it this way. The first step, especially if you're using a logo foil or a signature foil, is you want to get that on first. And I'm going to show you an easy way to get that on instead of worrying about it going on when you pour that glossy layer on, is that you're going to use UV resin to get your signature or logo foil to stick. So when we work with UV resin, you want to make sure, just as epoxy resin, that you're in a well ventilated space. So you have your window open, you have fans going, maybe you're working outside, that you're wearing a mask. You don't want to breathe in these toxic fumes. They're just as bad as epoxy resin. And you also want to make sure that you wear gloves. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put on my mask and put on the gloves, so I will sound a bit different once I have my mask on. Okay, so I have my mask and my gloves on now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my UV resin, and in the spot that you want your signature foil or signature to be, you're going to dab a little bit in that spot. I like to have my signatures down in this right corner, but you can have it in the middle, you can have it at the top, wherever you want it to be. You're going to put a bit of that UV resin there so you can stick that foil on. And now, something that you have to be careful with UV resin is that it cures way faster than epoxy, especially if you're in sunlight, in front of the window. So like me, I have to make sure that I'm trying to block out some of that sun so it doesn't cure fast and I can stick my foil onto it. So just keep that in mind if you're in the same situation. But if you're in like a dark area, more than likely it's not going to cure fast, and you'll have to use a UV flashlight or a UV lamp. UV lamp's going to cure the UV resin the best and cure it all the way, but a UV flashlight is good if you're just trying to get your piece to stick there, and then you could put it under a UV lamp. Also, all products that I'm showing today will be in the description. If I leave something out, just let me know. The UV resin that we're using here is different if you've been watching me for a while now. This is J Diction UV resin. And I recently became an affiliate for them, so that means if you want to try out their products, such as this UV resin, you can do so and get a 10% off discount using the code WISHES10. I'm going to put a little bit of UV resin down here. So you're not going to be able to see it, but just know I'm putting a little bit. And then I'm going to take my foil and put it in that spot. And I'm going to lightly tap my foil with a popsicle stick. You can use a toothpick as well, and get it covered in that UV resin. And then this is the part where you can just move it to be in the area you want it to be faced up, legible to read. And if you're good with the spot it's in, this is where you could just let it cure from the sun or with that flashlight and lamp. I think that's good. And if you need any logo foils, any signature foils, I do custom foils for other resin shops. Feel free to check out my Etsy or ask any questions on Instagram about it. So you see already, I didn't use a UV flashlight or UV lamp, and it's already cured. So something I forgot to mention is make sure that your coaster or whatever item you want to dome with on the back and put your signature is how you want the back and the front to look. So this is the back, this is straight up how it's supposed to look, and then when I turn it over, you're not going to be able to see the piece yet, of course, because I haven't demolded it, but this is how it's going to be face up on the front. And you have to be okay that this is how it's going to look. So if you have a foil in it, make sure that it's the right way that you want it to be. Or if you have a certain design that you want it to be straight up this way or straight up this way, make sure that you're not turning it over and that your back is now the wrong way. After we get our foil, our signature to be in our piece like this, we're now going to want to dome our piece. So we're going to dome our piece with epoxy resin. We're going to add that clear layer on. And for my epoxy resin, I like to use Amazing Clear Cast from MydNyte. And now I am an affiliate of MydNyte, so you can use my code WISHES10 also to get 10% off your total order. And they also do mica powders. They have all different types of epoxy resin for deep pours, depending on what you need your projects for, to measuring cups, to all types of different things. So be sure to check them out if you're interested in anything and use my code. But they also have a deal going on right now with their Amazing Clear Cast kit, because you may have seen before I was using their jugs, but right now I'm using their kits. And that's because you can get 4 of these 16-ounce Amazing Clear Cast kits for cheaper than a gallon. So 4 of these Amazing Clear Cast kits equal a gallon of epoxy resin, but you can get it cheaper than you would buy the gallon for. And it's also easier if you only like using the small bottles instead of having to lift those big jugs. These are how small the bottles are. They're both 16 ounces. They also have a discount where I believe you can get 8 of these kits for cheaper than 2 gallon of resin, and they equal the same amount. So yeah, we're going to use our epoxy resin to gloss that layer on. I'm pretty much all the way up there to complete my coaster in this mold. I'm going to only use 20 milliliters of resin, so I'm going to only do 10 part A and 10 part B. So I'm going to pour that. I'm going to start pouring 10 part A. And now we're going to pour 10 part B. Now that you have it all poured, depending on how much you need to fill up the back or how much you want to pour on the back of clear resin, you're going to slowly mix your resin together so that different parts mix together and become clear. And you have to make sure that you're not mixing for too long, because your resin will start curing and start heating up, and then it'll turn into a solid. But you also don't want to mix too fast, that you're getting a bunch of bubbles in your resin. So mix slowly, scrape the edges, and fast enough that they're mixing together and the color or the parts are combining and becoming clear. Another thing I want to mention is, depending on how much clear resin that you pour on the back of your piece in the mold, it will show up when you demold it. So let's say like this on the side here, if I pour it all the way up to the top, all this right here that's missing gets filled up with clear resin, and when I demold it, that chunk is going to be all clear resin. And you may see it at the end when we demold it after pouring our clear resin, but just keep that in mind. If you don't want clear resin to be showing on your piece, then maybe just only pour a little bit to have a nice amount of clear resin on the surface, just enough to make it glossy. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start slowly mixing my resin. Okay, now that your resin's all mixed up, all clear like you want it, if you're like me and have bubbles or still mix too fast no matter what, you can use a heat gun or a torch to pop some of those bubbles. I like using a heat gun just because I feel like a torch can burn the mold. It's easier to mess things up with the torch than the heat gun for me, but if you prefer using a torch and you're comfortable with it, go for it. So I'm just going to take my heat gun and pop some of the bubbles inside the cup, but also when we pour it, I will use the heat gun to pop some of those bubbles as well. Another thing is popsicle sticks do cause more bubbles, so if you want to try out silicone sticks, it may make it easier for you to get less bubbles. I'm just using popsicle sticks since I still have so many. So once you went over it with a heat gun or a torch, now I'm going to slowly start pouring it in my mold to get that glossy, clear layer on it. Again, pour as much as you want to. I'm going to take different steps. I'm going to pour a little bit, pop some bubbles, pour a little bit more, pop some bubbles, and try to spread it around in my mold so it's covering. Spreading the resin around to cover all the edges. And if your table's uneven, you can use popsicle sticks to try to even the mold out so the resin's going where it needs to go. I'm going to pour a bit more resin. And then once you're done pouring and popping bubbles, you could take Tupperware or some type of container to put on top of your piece. That way you're making sure no dust falls on it or anything gets into it. But if you have no problem with that, you could just leave it with nothing and just wait for it to cure. Resin or epoxy resin takes 24 to 48 hours to fully cure. So once this gets cured, we will demold it and we'll see how it turns out. We'll see how much clear layer of resin we have on the back of our piece. Okay, so we're back the next day, and as you can tell, even the light is better today. This piece is all glossy. If you remember before when I showed you in the beginning of the video, it had like bumps and other types of things. It just wasn't like glossy like this. But because I added the epoxy resin clear layer on, now it's just all glossy. It looks smooth. I mean, I noticed some areas have like little dents and stuff, but if you want to do a second dome, you can always do that. I may too after we see how it looks after demolding it, because I did not fill it up all the way with that clear resin, so my coaster may not be even. I might have to just sand it down and pour another clear layer on, but this does help with getting that first clear layer on and getting that signature logo on. But now we're going to demold it and see how it turned out. So I can already tell definitely going to have to sand it. You see that there. But I also get to see how the front turned out because it's been in the mold this whole time. So you can tell right there, that's all the clear resin that's just up. So it's not nice and even, it was just up against the mold there. So if we turn it to the side, all this is gonna have to get sanded down. But at least you can see that kind of that clear layer right there. When you turn it to the side there, that's all that clear resin. I still hope, even though I had to do a whole different doming, that maybe when you're doming it, whether it's in a coaster mold or something else, if you fill it up all the way, maybe you won't have to sand it and dome it again. But again, it's really up to your preference. And then now I get to see the front. Ooh, we can see a lot of micro bubbles or bubbles here from when I mixed the resin. I'm going to add a dome layer, clear layer of resin on the front as well. It's not going to fix these holes or anything. It will patch up the ones like in the middle here, but it won't fix these up, but it will give it a nice clear glossy top coat to it. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful, even though, I mean, from looking at it, you can see that we added in our foil, our shop foil, and then we also added in that clear layer of resin. So it gives you an idea that you can do the same thing, even though I'm personally going to sand this and add another layer of clear resin on top. It's all your choice. I hope it was fun watching it or you gained some knowledge from it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about it or if you use this technique, or let me know what technique you use. If you do it outside the mold, maybe you don't dome. If you want to give reasons to why you don't dome or give reasons to why you do dome. I'd love to build a little community in the chat of us just talking about resin and our processes, because there's not one right way to do it. There's different ways you can get it done and you can make some beautiful pieces. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.